Welcome back to the Deep Zone for another deep dive. Today, we're going to completely dismantle the Hollywood image of cybersecurity.
Yes!
I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. It's the guy with the dark hoodie. The guy with the dark hoodie, he's sitting in some dark basement somewhere, typing furiously at like 3 different mechanical keyboards while spinning a pen.
Usually with some intense techno music blasting in the background.
Exactly. And there's always like green code cascading down the monitor like the Matrix. Then suddenly he stops and hits one key like really hard and then shouts out, "Amen," as the progress bar hits like 100%.
It makes for really fantastic cinema, honestly. I mean, it gives the audience a visual language for something that is, in reality, almost completely invisible.
Yeah.
But as a representation of reality, it's terrible. And frankly, it's terrible policy if that's how you actually think security
Which is why we're
works.
looking at a stack of research today that paints a totally different picture. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 1, Today's Security Professional, specifically focusing on the COMPTIA Security Plus objectives. And what we found in this source material isn't just about hacking back or, digital warfare. It's actually about a structured, almost philosophical approach to keeping the world running.
It really is.
It turns out real security is a lot less about your typing speed and a lot more about being what the text specifically calls a steward and guardian.
I love that phrase, steward and guardian. It's a key phrase from the source material, and it almost sounds medieval, like you're literally guarding a castle. But it perfectly frames security as a discipline of structure and stability. It's understanding the rules of the game so you can protect data from everything, not just the malicious attacker with the black hoodie, but any attacker, whether it's an earthquake that causes physical damage to the data center, or, the well-meaningful employee who accidentally leaves the company laptop in the back of a rideshare.
Oh, man, we are definitely going to get to that rideshare story later because it is an absolute nightmare scenario. But first, our mission today is to decode the massive amount of alphabet soup in this field.
There is so much of it.
CIA, DDAD, DLP, PII. It seriously feels like we need a decoder ring just to get through the introduction of this tech.
You really do.
But we want to understand the specific tools professionals actually use. Everything from digital encryption down to literal, physical, vicious guard dogs.
And crucially, we need to connect those dry textbook definitions to the real-world stakes. Because when these concepts fail, businesses don't just lose some data.
Right.
They lose their reputation, their money, and sometimes their ability to exist at all.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The source material starts with what it calls the absolute bedrock of the industry. If you learn nothing else in security, you have to learn the Holy Trinity. It's the CIA triad. And to be absolutely clear, everyone listening, we're not talking about spies in Langley.
No, definitely not. Although I am sure they care very deeply about this exact framework too.
Fair point.
But in our context, CIA stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The source actually makes a really bold claim here. It says that if you are working in security, everything you do, every firewall you configure, every lock you install, every policy you write is trying to achieve one of these 3 things. There is no fourth option.
That is bold. Let's break this down because I think the people assume they know what these words mean, but the text adds some important nuance. Confidentiality feels the most intuitive, just the keeping secrets part.
Right. Confidentiality ensures that unauthorized individuals cannot access sensitive information. This is what most people naturally think of first when they hear the words cybersecurity.
Preventing prying eyes.
Exactly. Preventing prying eyes. We use tools like firewalls, access control lists, and encryption to stop unauthorized disclosure. If I send you a private message, confidentiality means only you can read it.
Simple enough. But the second one, integrity, is where it gets really interesting to me. Because this isn't just about keeping people out. It's about keeping the data true.
Precisely. Integrity ensures there's no unauthorized modification of the information. And the source makes really crucial distinction here that I love.
Right, because sure, a hacker might want to change a bank balance from $100 to $1 million.
Yeah.
That is obviously a failure of integrity.
But it's not always a hacker. Integrity also protects against pure accident.
Like what?
Think about a random power spike causing a bit flip on a hard drive that corrupts a file. Or just a user with fat fingers making a typo in a critical database entry.
Oh, just a human error.
Exactly. If the data changes and we didn't authorize it, whether it was a criminal mastermind or literally just a cosmic ray hitting the server, we have failed at integrity.
So if the data is totally secure from outsiders, but is suddenly wrong.
You failed. You're just guarding garbage at that point.
Okay. And then we have availability, which honestly sounds the simplest. It's like, is your computer turned on? But the stakes are actually huge here.
It's massive. Availability ensures that systems are ready when legitimate users actually need them. It doesn't matter if your data is perfectly secret and perfectly accurate if nobody can access it because the server room is literally on fire.
Right.
So things like keeping backups, building in fault tolerance, and disaster recovery planning all fall entirely under availability. If a massive company like Amazon goes down for just 5 minutes, they lose millions of dollars.
That is an availability failure.
A very expensive one, yes.
Now here's where the text throws a bit of a curveball, because if every superhero needs a villain, if CIA is the hero, then the evil twin would be the model called DAD triad, not the opposite of MOM.
DAD. It's a very clever mnemonic device. The DAD triad represents the 3 key threats, and they map perfectly to the failures of the CIA triad. It's literally like looking in a mirror.
So walk us through the evil twin.
First, you have disclosure. That is the enemy of confidentiality. It's data loss or exfiltration, basically someone seeing what they absolutely shouldn't.
Okay, and then you have alteration.
Which is the direct enemy of integrity. That's unauthorized modification.
And finally, denial.
The enemy of availability. This could be a DDoS attack,
A distributed denial of service.
where an attacker purposely floods a website with fake traffic just to shut it down. Or, again, it could simply be a natural disaster cutting a major communication line. If the legitimate user is denied access, the DDoS triad wins.
It's a great way to visualize it. Now, before we move off these core definitions, there was one more concept the expert source highlighted. It's not actually in the CIA triad, but it's crucial for proving who did what.
Non-repudiation.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mouthful to say, but it is absolutely essential for modern business. It essentially means the ability to prove that someone took a specific action so they cannot possibly deny it later.
Like a digital gotcha.
In a way, yeah. Think of digital signatures. If you sign an email digitally with your private cryptographic key, you provide absolute assurance that it came from you.
You can't later claim, hey, I never sent that.
Because the math literally proves you did. It provides undeniable proof of origin. It's the digital equivalent of having a notary public sitting right there watching you sign a physical contract.
Okay, so we have our framework. We know we need to protect confidentiality, integrity, and availability against disclosure, alteration, and denial. But why? The source material goes pretty deep. I'm talking deep zone deep.
It does, and this is where we move from it just being an IT problem to being a total business disaster. The text outlines 5 distinct categories of risk, and they really show just how devastating a breach can be. It's not just about computers acting weird.
Let's run through them, because I think people often just stop at the first one, which is financial risk.
Right, financial risk is the money. It's the direct, obvious cost. Rebuilding a data center after a fire or paying for expensive forensic experts to come in and figure out how you got hacked.
But the text points out that financial damage is often indirect as well.
Exactly. If you can't process customer orders because your system is locked up, you lose revenue. But that actually ties directly into the second category, which is arguably much worse.
Reputational risk.
Yeah, this one feels the scariest to me because it's incredibly hard to measure. You can't look at a corporate spreadsheet and say, find that line for, trust/loss.
You can't. It is the absolute loss of goodwill. Customers, suppliers, your own employees, they lose trust in you. They might not explicitly send an email saying, we are leaving because of the breach.
They just stop doing business.
They just fade away. And once that reputation is gone, it is incredibly hard, sometimes impossible, to get back.
The third one, strategic risk.
Okay, I had a very specific example from the text, and I found it totally terrifying. It involved a laptop and a rideshare.
Oh, yes. This scenario paints the picture perfectly. Imagine a senior engineer or a top executive leaves an unencrypted laptop in the back of a rideshare car.
Okay.
And that laptop contains the detailed plans for a brand new product. Maybe it's the next generation smartphone or a revolutionary new pharmaceutical drug.
A product the company hasn't even launched yet.
Right. Now imagine a competitor gets their hands on that laptop, they see the plans, they realize exactly what you're doing, and they beat you to market. way. You have entirely lost your first mover advantage. That is strategic risk. It's not just about losing the physical cost of a $2,000 laptop.
It's about the company becoming less effective in meeting its major goals.
Exactly. It's literally a game over scenario for the entire product line.
That is brutal. Okay, then we have operational risk.
This is about day-to-day function. If a risk slows down your normal business processes, causes constant delays, or forces your staff to go back to manual pen and paper workarounds.
That's operational.
Right. It's inefficiency. It's the daily friction that just slowly kills productivity.
And finally, the compliance risk. This is basically the law and order part.
If you violate laws like IP, which protects health information in the US, or GDPR in Europe, you face massive government fines and sanctions. That is compliance risk.
And these aren't just slap-on-the-wrist parking tickets.
No, not at all. These fines can be massive percentages of a company's global financial revenue.
Speaking of personal information, the text makes a really special note about identity theft and PII.
PII stands for Personally Identifiable Information. Your social security numbers, driver's licenses, passport data.
Right.
The text strongly emphasizes that organizations act as stewards of this data. If they let this slip, the impact extends way beyond the company itself to the actual human beings whose identities get stolen. It's a very heavy responsibility.
So the stakes are undeniably high. We know what we're protecting, the CIA triad, and we know what we're fighting against, DAD triad. Now, let's talk about the weapons actually used to fight with. The arsenal, right?
Let's start with the how. The mechanism of action. There are 4 buckets here. First, technical controls. These are your digital rules. Firewalls, encryption, antivirus.
Things that live in the software or hardware.
Exactly. It's essentially code fighting code.
Okay, then operational controls.
This is the people side of things. Processes. Log monitoring, user access reviews, mandatory security training. It's how we human beings manage the technology.
Because you can have the best lock in the world, but if the operational control fails,
Meaning someone literally leaves the key under the welcome mat.
then the lock is completely useless.
Exactly.
What about managerial controls?
That's the high-level oversight. Risk assessment, strategic planning, project management. It's the paperwork and the executive decision-making that guides the whole ship.
And my personal favorite category, physical controls. And that's because I've been working out a lot lately.
Real-world barriers, fences, heavy locks, bright lighting, fire suppression systems.
Because if I can just walk right into your building and physically steal the server rack, your fancy firewall really doesn't matter.
Not one bit.
This leads us to the second way the text categorizes controls, by intent, the 6 types. And I have to say, the text gets surprisingly colorful here.
It really does. It starts with preventative controls. These try to stop the incident before it even happens. Encryption, classic example of this. Even if they manage to steal the data, they can't read it. The attack fails. And then we have different type of controls.
And this is where the source explicitly mentions vicious guard dogs.
Yes, vicious guard dogs and barbed wire fences. The core goal of a deterrent is just to discourage the attempt in the first place.
You want the attacker to look at your facility and say, oh, no, that's way too much trouble. I'm going to rob someone else. You want it to be a psychological warfare.
Next is detective controls.
These spot the issue when it happens. Intrusion detection systems, security cameras, motion sensors.
They don't actually stop the intruder, though.
No, but they let you know he's in the building so you can react immediately.
Got it. Then corrective controls.
This is fixing the problem after the fact. Restoring from backups after a nasty ransomware attack is the prime example here. The damage is already done. Now we just correct it and try to get back to business.
And then there's directive controls, telling people what to do, company policies, procedures. Do not write your password on a yellow sticky note and place it on a monitor. That's directive control.
And the final one, which the expert source actually did a whole mini dive on, compensating controls. This one feels a bit like a workaround to me.
It is a workaround, but it's a highly necessary one. The text uses the PCI DSS, the strict payment card industry standards, as its main example, because sometimes you simply can't meet a security requirement perfectly.
What's the specific scenario they give?
Let's say you need to run a severely outdated operating system because a specific critical business application only works on that old version.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a legacy system that controls a massive robotic factory arm, and it literally only runs on Windows XP.
Running an operating system that old is a total security nightmare. It's full of known vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. But you can't just update it or the entire factory stops running. So you implement a compensating control.
How does that work?
You isolate that specific machine on a totally separate network. You cut it off from the public internet, completely creating what we call an air gap.
Oh, so you compensate for weakness by adding extra layers elsewhere.
Exactly. You're actively managing the risk when absolute perfection just isn't possible.
That makes a lot of sense. It's very pragmatic. Now let's zoom in on the actual thing we are trying to protect through all of this. The data itself. The text breaks down data into 3 distinct states.
Right. Because to protect data effectively, you really have to know exactly where it is. First, you have data at rest. This is data just sitting quietly on a hard drive stored in the cloud or backed up on a tape drive.
The main risk there is just theft, right?
Yeah, someone's stealing the physical drive or quietly browsing the server.
Okay, second state.
Data in transit. This is data actively moving over a network connection. The big risk here is eavesdropping, someone basically listening in on the digital wire.
And the third state.
Data in use. And this is the tricky one. This is data sitting in the memory, the RAM, or the CPU, while the computer is actively processing it.
Why does the text say that state is so tricky?
Because to actually process the data, you have to decrypt it first. You can't do meaningful math on encrypted gibberish.
Right.
So for that tiny split second while it's in the memory, the data is fully readable. The risk here is a sophisticated attacker reading the memory itself to steal secrets while they are temporarily unlocked.
Wow. And to fight these specific data risks, the source introduces the concept of DLP, data loss prevention.
DLP is a fascinating piece of technology. It's strictly designed to stop sensitive info from ever leaving the building. You can have agent-based DLP, which is software that lives directly on the user's laptop itself.
The source mentions this can actually block a USB drive.
It can. If a disgruntled employee tries to plug in a thumb drive to secretly download the entire customer database and walk out the door, the agent-based DLP says, access denied. It completely blocks the USB port.
That is incredibly useful. And then there is agentless DLP.
Right. That version sits back on the network, just watching all the traffic flying by. It's constantly looking for secrets, hiding in the emails, and file transfers leaving the organization.
But how does a piece of software know what the secret looks like?
It uses 2 main methods. First is pattern matching. The software knows exactly what a credit card number looks like, the specific spacing, the exact number of digits. If it sees that distinct pattern trying to leave, it blocks it.
And the second method.
Watermarking. System administrators can apply invisible digital tags to highly sensitive documents. The DLP scanner just constantly looks for those tags.
So it's basically like having a security guard open, reading all your mail as it leaves the corporate post office.
Effectively, yes. I know it sounds a bit invasive, but in a strict corporate environment dealing with highly sensitive data, it's completely standard practice.
Now, what if we have data we absolutely must keep for business reasons, but we really don't want it to be dangerous if it somehow gets stolen? The text talks a lot about data minimization and obfuscation.
Well, the absolute best way to protect data is to just not have it. Destroy it completely if you don't need it.
Yeah.
But if you really do need it, you can obfuscate it. We have hashing, which turns data into a unique, jumbled string of random characters. Then we have masking.
Masking is what you see on normal store receipts, right?
Exactly. Only showing the last 4 digits of a credit card and replacing the rest with X's. That's masking.
And then there's tokenization.
Tokenization is a great approach. You completely swap the sensitive data, like a real credit card number, for a totally random number. That random number is the token.
Okay.
Then you keep a highly secure lookup table in a digital vault somewhere else that links that random token back to the real number.
So the main database just has useless tokens, right?
If hackers steal that main database of tokens, it's completely useless to them without also breaching the vault. It's kind of like someone stealing all the plastic poker chips from my house, but not being able to actually cash them in at the casino.
That is a great analogy. However, the expert source gave a very specific, stern warning about hashing. They brought up a concept called the rainbow table attack. When I first read it, it sounded like a magic trick, but it's actually just pure math.
It is just math, and it perfectly highlights a major hidden weakness in hashing. Here is the exact scenario they outline in the text.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a large college has a list of specific students who failed their classes. To supposedly protect their privacy, the IT department hashes the student IDs. So instead of a file saying student 123 failed, it's just a jumble of characters like X9Y2Z.
Which sounds totally secure on the surface.
Ideally, yes.
But if a malicious attacker has a public directory list of all the students at the college, they can just run the hash function on every single ID themselves.
Yes, because the math algorithm always works the exact same way. They hash student A and see if that result matches any hash on the failed list. Then they hash student B and check the list again. Since the pool of possible answers the student body is a limited size, they can easily brute force the privacy right out of the system. That's the core concept of a rainbow table attack, using pre-computed hashes to reverse engineer the hidden secrets.
So hashing isn't foolproof at all if the attacker can just guess the limited input.
Correct. You have to actively add what we call salt extra random data to make it much harder. But the broader core lesson the text is teaching is this. Don't ever trust a single security tool blindly.
Right.
You really have to understand the underlying math and mechanics to know exactly where the holes are.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started it all way back with the CIA. Triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
We looked closely at the opposing threats: disclosure, alteration, denial.
We talked about business risks ranging from just lost money to permanently lost reputations.
And we walked through the actual controls, everything from highly technical encryption right down to the physical vicious guard dogs.
And finally, how will we mask and minimize data to keep it safe even if the walls are breached? It really reinforces the idea that true security isn't about blocking hackers. It's a massive, comprehensive system.
It absolutely is. And it goes back to what the text said at the very beginning. It refers to professionals as stewards and guardians.
Right.
That has to be the mindset. You are the guardian of trust. When a regular customer gives you their credit card or their private medical history, they are fully trusting that you have built a system robust enough to handle everything: earthquakes, power spikes, and cybercriminals.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final, incredibly practical concept mentioned in the text: gap analysis.
Yes, this is the perfect thought to end on today. A gap analysis is a very simple but incredibly powerful exercise.
How does it work?
You look at your control objectives, meaning what you actively want to achieve. For example, your objective might be ensure absolutely no unauthorized access to the main server. Then you look at your actual controls, what you literally have in place right now. Like, we have a standard padlock on the server room door.
And the difference between the objective and the reality.
The difference between what you want and what you actually have is the gap.
And that gap is your true risk.
Exactly. So my ultimate challenge to you listening right now is this. In your own digital life or in your own organization, where exactly is the gap? Where is the real distance between what you think is secure and what is actually protected?
Because that's exactly where attackers live. Something to think about the next time you leave your company laptop in the back of a rideshare. Okay, that brings us to the end. Thanks again for joining us in the Deep Zone for another deep dive. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Stay safe out there.
This is Lux, Micah, and Nadi saying, stay classy, Internet.